Okay, so we're now done with the 12-day session with 8 people on board, and it's time to summarize our water and electricity consumption.
Now the crew that has sailed with us from Brazil to Suriname and then to the Caribbean has left us. And tomorrow my sister and her friends arrive. So we're gonna be 8 people in total on the boat. And we were thinking, what were we thinking?
We were thinking that we're gonna take the opportunity to try to evaluate water consumption and electricity consumption and give a bit of a recap of how all the system works. That's gonna be exciting.
Mm-hmm. Hello to new crew. Mike. Hey!
Hello!
What's your names?
Helga, Anna,
Patrick.
Hey! And now we are in Chatham Bay, Union Island. What's happening?
Time for some volleyball.
And here is Saint Vincent, Petit Saint Vincent, and we are anchored over there. Time to head back to Beckway.
Okay, so we're now done with the 12-day session with 8 people on board. Most of the crew has left, and it's time to summarize our water and electricity consumption. For these past 12 days we've been running our water maker, let's check what I wrote down now, 31.5 hours. We're actually going to make a bit of a quick throughput test, because we don't really exactly know the throughput of the water maker. We haven't done a test in these waters, as the throughput is quite temperature dependent. So we'll make a throughput test, and then we'll calculate our total production and then the daily consumption, which we in the beginning guesstimated to like 50 liters a day. So let's see how that ends up. And then we're going to have a look at the electricity production during these days as well. But let's do a throughput test. We actually have these flow meters here, but they're not very accurate. It's very difficult to read them properly. So this is our sample hose that we have in the galley to test the water quality. We do that every time we start the water maker and every time before we stop it, to make sure that the water that we pass to our tanks are of good quality. And also when we are on crossing, we typically do this periodically while making water. So let's say every 20 minutes or something like that, to make sure that we don't contaminate the water tanks. And it's also very useful for making a flow test. So now we're going to try to fill up 600 milliliters of water and measure the time it takes. So this one is connected to the seawater, and we use this one a lot when we are in areas where the seawater is nice. I mean, when we're on anchorage and stuff like that. Maybe when we're not in a dirty marina, but so we do most of the dishes and clean off all the dishes with this one, which obviously reduces the fresh water consumption a lot. And then we typically just try to rinse stuff off with fresh water in the end. So we ended up at 22.7 liters per hour. I was guessing 23, so that was quite close. So let's see what that gives us in our total production during these 12 days, and also the daily consumption. We have produced 715 liters. Obviously we cannot measure it that accurately, but around 700 liters. And in 12 days that averages 60 liters per day. Maybe slightly more than we guessed or hoped for, I don't know. I think we did good. Yeah. So that's, I mean, on 8 people it's 7.5 liters a day. And that includes then obviously all drinking water, all cooking, all dishes, all the water you use in the tap, you know, washing your hands and stuff like that. And also some occasional rinse-offs in fresh water as well. So from an electricity point of view, it's also of course a bit stressful being 8 people on board, as all cooking and everything takes more energy basically. I've said this before as well, but we're running full electric cooking, so we have an induction cooktop and an induction regular electrical oven. So during this period we managed to keep up with the state of charge of the battery from day to day quite well in the beginning, but it's also obviously quite weather dependent, as we're only producing electricity from solar, and then we're using a generator as backup. And we managed to run this whole 12-day period without running our generator at all, so only out of solar power. And in the beginning we were quite steady, and then in the end it started to drop a bit, mainly because it was a little bit less solar production, but also because we did cooked some dishes basically that used more energy. But we can have a quick look at our solar production during these days.
How much solar do we have?
On our arc we have 2 times 585, so 1170, right, of rated power. These panels are also bifacial, so I'm not sure exactly at what conditions that power is stated. I think there is with like 10% of reflection for the bottom surface. But anyhow, around just less than 1200 watts installed. And then we have 330 watts of solar installed on our doghouse. And these 2 panel groups, they're split up so that the big ones on the arc, they're charging our 48 volt batteries, and the one on the doghouse are charging our 12 volt batteries, or basically direct supply 12 volt appliances, since we don't really have that much battery capacity on the 12 volt. So the last 12 days it looks like we have been around, I don't know, 5.8 to 6 maybe kilowatt hours per day. And one thing that was quite tricky to get hold of is the dimensioning of solar, because it's so dependent on the placement and also obviously on the conditions where you have the solar panels. And it was very difficult to know or get good numbers of how much energy per day or per some time unit can you actually expect out of a certain rated power, given some kind of installation conditions. So we did basically everything we could to get the best conditions for our installation. So we have them high up on our arc. We don't have any antennas or radars or other stuff around there, it's just the solar panels. I mean, obviously they can be shaded by the mast and sails if we have sails up, but otherwise there is nothing really shading them, which I think is very, very beneficial. In our case then, let's say that we are averaging around 5.8 kilowatt hours per day, given a rated power of 1170 watts. I'm not sure if this is the best measurement of unit of measurement, but it's at least some kind of measurement. And that gives us a ratio of 5, so per every watt installed we produce times 5 of that in watt hours per day. Quite a weird unit, but it's quite a useful unit in the end if you want to do an energy budget, which you typically want to do per day. So we get 5 times 5 on the panels on the arc. So if you're comparing this with the solar panels that are placed on the doghouse, which has a way worse installation position as the boom is shading at least one of the panels all the time, they have a ratio of, during this period of time they have been producing around like 850 maybe watt hours per day. Installed capacity, I think I was wrong before, I think it's 116 watts rated power. That gives a ratio of 2.4, way worse than the ones on the arc. So what does this tell you basically? I mean, installation position is very important, and also installing a certain amount of rated power doesn't necessarily give you a lot of energy. I mean, it depends on where you place them. So having a good placement with smaller panels might give you way more than having lots of panels in a bad placement. But and I think from before, when I was trying to do the energy budget for our installation, I found this number of this ratio everywhere between like maybe 2 to 6, something like that. And the ratio we have now of 5, that's really not like the perfect day. That's over 12 days of production. So for certain days we can have really good conditions if we are anchored in a position where we get the sun without shading the mast, for example, on a whole day, or a really sunny day as well. I mean, the production now of 5.8 or something like that, it's really average. A really good sunny day we're closer to 8 kilowatt hours in one day. So that would be, then you have a ratio of 6.8 instead, which I think is very good. Yeah, I kind of lost track now where we started, but okay, so we started at the state of charge at 72% 12 days ago, and then, as I said, we've been up and down. We were quite on a plateau, producing as much energy as we were using over a 24-hour period. But then the last days we were dropping quite a lot. The weather was a bit more cloudy, and we used more energy. Basically, we did more cooking, more cleaning and stuff. So we ended up at rock bottom was, let's see if I can find it, like 15% state of charge, which is obviously as slow as we want to go, because measuring with a shunt over such a long time when you don't reach 100%, so you can do a sync, basically resetting the measure the accumulated amp hours drawn. You want to have some margin, because you will have some error for sure. So when we were at 15%, we actually had to run the generator a bit to get back up to like 30%, something like that. But overall, I mean, I think that was the first time we ran the generator since we did it in Suriname a bit, just before the crossing, because we wanted to start at the high state of charge while sailing.
And even though we were in a marina in Suriname, we didn't plug in.
No, we were not plugged in. We haven't been plugged into a marina since Tenerife.
No.
Yeah, in Tenerife. Now it's end of January. That was in end of October, November, December, January. 3 months. And in that time, maybe we ran, I don't know, in total 5-6 hours on generator maybe. Yeah, so our generator is it's rated as a 6 kilowatt generator, but we're running it. It's a 3-phase generator, but we're running it with a single phase setup, which reduces the output a bit. We typically try to use around a bit less than 4 kilowatts from the generator. So at a generator output of 4 kilowatts, we will charge the full bank in a bit more than 3 hours if we will start from 0% to 100%. That typically never happens, because we only use it to support, and then we try to rely on the sun as much as possible. Yesterday, when we had to run the generator, but we ran it for like an hour just to push in 3-ish 4 kilowatt hours, and then that's enough for some time to get some sun to get back up to 100% again.
So yeah, that was a little bit of a summary of how much water and electricity we have used here in the Caribbean, and how much energy we've been able to make from our solar panels and everything. Hope it was a bit useful. Information about real life data and real life consumption, and so was something we found very useful when we were looking at how we would do our battery and the solar panel setup and everything. If there is anything else you're curious about, just let us know.